On Biotech Bites, join us for a brief conversation with Kevin Dushney, previous CIO of multiple biotechs in the Cambridge area, when we go through artificial intelligence and what it means to our industry. You can catch us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. See you there. Welcome to Biotech Bites. I'm your host, Steve Swan, and today I'm joined by Kevin Dushney. Kevin's been the head of IT at several biotechs. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you having me.
And to our guests, if at the end you like what you see and you like what you heard, don't forget to like us and follow us on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. So, Kevin, what I always like to start out with is, just asking folks just a quick introductory into you, who you are, kind of how you got to where you are and where you came from.
Sure. So originally I went to school for engineering, ended up graduating in economics. Computers and programming are always a hobby of mine as a kid, and did a couple of jobs unrelated out of college, got into consulting, and then joined my first biotech back in 2000 after consulting in like the mid to late 90s, across a variety of industries, including VC. But I loved the biotech clients, and one of them, decided to hire me, and that was my, initial first time gig back in 2000, and haven't left. So I've just moved on from biotech number 8. And so I've been in the industry the entire career, everything from early stage, preclinical, early clinical through, I've done 3 commercial builds and a couple of launches along the way. So I've seen quite a number of things, mostly in the small to mid space, which I really, really enjoy, up to, I think the biggest company I was at was maybe 500 employees, but we can talk about that more, but I really like that. That's sort of the sweet spot of, seeing impact and, being a real change agent in the organization when it's that size.
Now, do you come in just to get some perspective?
Yeah.
Do you even come in when they need to build the foundation when they have pretty much nothing?
So yeah, that was actually my last company was, believe it or not, I'm, IT person number 1. And, went from the proverbial dumpster fire, through 5 years to, building out a really solid foundation for a phase 1 clinical company, from ERP to, we right from public into, 404A, which is Sarbanes-Oxley for, those that deal with public companies. So getting all those systems ready, getting SOX compliant. So a building move. So it's been a heck of a last 5 years. And, recently I've moved on and now doing, fractional CIO type work. But yeah, sometimes I'm in first one in the door. And then the company before that, I was hired when the BLA was already filed, and it's let's build a commercial organization in 11 months and launch a drug. And that was probably one of the funnest, rides I had in my career until we didn't get the approval, which, as you know, is key. Which is too bad. It was an approvable asset with good safety and efficacy, and cell and gene therapy. This is a story many have heard. It came down to manufacturing. But, without getting into too much detail, basically the venture between the VC firm and the company that had the asset, without that milestone payment of approval, we couldn't figure out how to fund the company. So it sort of fell apart, unfortunately. And that's what the next role. So anyway, the point being early stage all the way through late. And sometimes the whole journey, which has been really, really rewarding, is coming in, building a department from 1 or 2, all the capabilities from early R to development, and building a commercial launch team and organization and all those capabilities. A lot of work, but I tell you, when you launch a drug, especially your first one for the company, it's hard to describe the satisfaction professionally of having walked that journey.
Well, it's a lot of work to get to that point, and it's a big adrenaline rush, I'm sure, when you get that.
It is. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. When you get that approval for the entire org, but
yeah.
Each, decade that's gone by, IT plays more and more of a role in that. And that's something I've really noticed throughout, my career is, you've gone from really cost center to running a lot of infrastructure, order taker, all the way to, you're a strategic partner. And you can really make, especially now with AI and, low code solutions. I mean, tremendous, the toolkit now that you have at your disposal, even as a small organization, tremendously powerful. And I love that because you can have access to the similar tools that a lot of big pharma do, bring those in house small and take advantage of all that. So you're really an enabler now.
Well, yeah. So, and to circle back on that, I mean, technology being everywhere, I've been doing this 26 years, and at the beginning, it was kind of like, yeah, we handle technology, and it was like, be careful what you wish for, because now everything's technology. So
Yeah.
it got into data science, analytics, everything data.
Yeah.
The data lakes and everything. I
Visualization.
mean,
Yeah,
we have to handle
exactly.
it all. I mean, it's crazy. It's and folks sometimes come to us and they're like, "You mean you don't just do security, or you don't just do data or data
Yeah.
analytics?" No, we've been doing it all for years, so it's just kind of what we do, right? So
The breadth that you have to have on your team is now vastly different than it was, certainly like 20 years ago, right? So it can be daunting. The pace of change, especially now with AI, is amazing on one hand, but it's from a compliance and staying on top of what's current. It can be, just a full-time job reading and bringing what's relevant into your organization, what's hype, what's real, and what to.
let's hit that for a second, right? The
Yeah,
small company, I mean, so you talked about low code, you talked about AI real briefly,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
What do you think? And I don't want to pigeonhole you into one thing, but what do you
yeah,
think has been one of the biggest, because you've seen a lot, you've
yeah,
seen companies, over the last bunch of years, 8 of them, right? So
yeah.
what has been, in your opinion,
Mhm.
the biggest or one of the biggest sort of technology or technology trends that have really helped the small company become viable players?
Yeah, I mean, originally going back, it was, virtualization, not having to have huge data centers to mostly SaaS, where companies, the last several companies I've been at are just cloud first, right? So you don't have these massive capital outlays and, you're either big in Amazon or Azure, for your compute, now to present day, thinking about AI as, a number of different ways. One is an enabler, right? So your average office worker can be upskilled, more efficient, improve the speed of writing. A good example is regulatory writing, right? That's a very popular area right now where, medical writers, you can either have a leaner team or a less experienced team and upskill them, with the use of, I don't know if we can name names, but, we chat GPT at my last company, but could be Claude, could be Gemini, depending if you're a Microsoft or Google shop. But those tools, when people are trained on how to prompt, how to use the tools properly and efficiently, end up, they go through what I call a J curve, where you're learning, but then you're up the ramp and becoming more efficient, more productive. And that's what I've seen acutely over the last at least year or so as the models improve, the offerings improve, and even as a small org, we're able to dip our toe in the water and start, deploying these enterprise wide, and then start to think about, agents and what else can this stuff do. But that the table stakes is just making people more efficient and effective, and that's been, that's real. That's not hype. There's a lot of hype out there, but I think the efficiency part is certainly real, and people are starting to see those gains, and they're tangible.
Do you see that, as a head of IT, are you this is the $1,000,000 question. Are you hiring less people because of AI?
No, not yet. I think that's probably, if I had to speculate,
Yeah.
that's probably a more of a big pharma thing. In fact, I've read a couple of articles, back to the medical writing example. I forget the company, but they weren't letting people go from their medical writing team, but they were hiring less of them. So they kept it the same and then upskilled or made them more efficient with the staff they had. So that was an interesting dynamic, but it wasn't taking people's jobs per se. It was just making preventing them from overgrowing. But at smaller companies, not yet. I think that the teams are too small and you end up needing, capabilities as you pivot from research to, early clinical to late clinical to commercial. The team's the team. Like there's sort of a baseline team. Um, are we hiring data scientists yet at small companies? Some are. It depends on the nature of your work. If you're really a data heavy or like a diagnostic company, certainly yes. But if you're in small molecule and other things. Probably not yet if you're little.
Another trend I've seen, and you hit on this a minute ago, that you're doing some of the fractional work, or starting to do some of the
Yeah,
fractional work now, and you did that in the past
I
as
have. Yes.
well. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think 19 and 20, if I remember correctly.
Yep. That's right.
Um, you know, it seems to be a trend for these organizations, because they
Yeah.
can lay down their foundation, they can have the folks that are keeping the lights on, the computers going, the
Yeah.
phones, whatever you want to call it. And then if they need a Kevin to come in and, I don't know, spin up our commercial systems or spin up our
Yeah.
cyber, they can hire that specialist on a temporary basis
That's
for
right.
6 hours a week, 30 hours a week, for whatever the number is that they think they need. And you can help them figure out how many hours they need that. And then you can
Yeah.
roll off after 6 months or 12 months, or you can grow into from cyber to
Yeah.
commercial to whatever. Correct? Am I thinking about
Exactly.
that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially given the current biotech climate, it gives you a chance to rent, those capabilities versus buy them. So if you're a small, mid-sized biotech and you don't want to hire a CIO or an SVP of IT, whatever it is, with a lot of compensation, just like any other executive, you can say, well, I don't need you full time, but I need a strategic roadmap. I need an assessment. What kind of staff do I need? Can you look at the team I have now? Where are my gaps? And put together, that's your work product. And then what they want to do with it is, phase two, let's call it. But phase one is, let's understand, where you are, where you're trying to go. What do you have in place today? And it's a classic sort of management consulting approach, right? It's what nets out as gaps, and then how do you prioritize those? What can you afford to invest in? How quickly do you go? And all those things. But that's, through all the biotechs I've been at, I can offer, that advice, which makes it fun. And, you can seriously make an impact. And it's a great way to educate people on, here's what good should look like at stage 1, 2, and 3, whatever those milestones are. It could be leading up to your first IND or your first IND or NDA BLA.
Right. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of folks coming to me saying sort of the same thing, meaning, individuals saying, "Hey, this is something great that I'd love to do." The fractional
Yeah.
side of things.
Yeah.
But I think there's also big time demand out there for organizations as well, right? Because they
It-
need the specialist, but they don't want
yeah.
the specialist to be in house for the next 5 years, right?
Exactly. Well, yes, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is, cash is king more than ever right now, but also, they might be waiting on a data readout and they don't want to hire someone, and then hey, they don't get the data readout they want, and then they're riffing on employees.
They have a
For years.
liability there.
They have a liability, and also, there's I think there's a bit of a more morality to it too, where you don't want to hire someone in and then, 3 months later you get a bad data readout and then you got to send those people packing. Unfortunately, it's just part of the business. But if you can avoid it, this is one way to do it. It also, thinking about another way is, if you have, 2, 3 clients at a time, eventually you might find one that you really like. They like you. There's a role that emerges. They've got some traction. Now you get to do the try and buy it both ways, and you understand the management team, you understand the culture of the company, what they stand for, what are their objectives. So you're going in really eyes wide open versus, you're kind of rolling the dice. Even if you know somebody that works at a company, which has been everywhere I've been so far, you still don't really know until you get in there what the culture is like. But if you're consulting there for 6 months, you're going to know, right? Really well.
Well, I also think that it's not only do you not know, but each person reacts differently to you.
Yeah.
Two personalities. A company's got a personality, an individual's got a personality.
Yes.
When two things come together, we don't know how the chemical reaction is going to go, right?
That's true.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you trust your friend, but you know what? Your personality and your reaction might be different.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, that's their experience. Exactly. It might
Yeah.
not be yours because of, what line you report up into, who your boss is. There's a number of factors that'll directly influence that where, hey, you're having a great time, but somebody else might not be for, different reasons, but you both work for the same company. So,
Yeah. Right,
yeah,
like
not
you said,
mutually exclusive. Yeah.
yeah, the plus sides are saving the cash or not taking on that long-term liability, and then also both sides get to try and buy if they need
That's
to.
right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun. And you get to mix it up a little bit. You're not going to the same company every day. You get to, give advice and, it's nice when that input and advice is appreciated, wanted. and that, that feels good professionally, and you're helping a company, you're helping making an impact on that company and their growth trajectory, which is a lot of fun and professionally rewarding.
Now, I have a different question for you. Let's say, for example, I'm a new small company CIO or a head of IT. I'm just coming into this. I'm
Yeah.
going into my first gig. You've
Yeah.
already done 8, right?
Yeah.
Been there, done that. And I come to you and I say, "Hey, Kevin, you got any advice for me? What should I be
Yeah.
thinking about? What should I be looking at? What should I be doing? What should I not be doing?" That kind of thing.
Yeah.
What would your reaction to that question be?
I would love to do that. So there's a colleague of mine who's been in this industry a little bit longer than I have that does exactly that. He essentially mentors new heads of IT. And that's something, I'd love to get into at some point. And I've done it informally on the side, but, as just, hey, let's connect up. And that's essentially the consulting engagement with the company is, hey, help our head of IT work through some of this stuff. And then as a consultant, they have a safe space, right, to discuss and like, is this a lousy idea? Is this awful? Is this going to resonate? Can you review my deck, before I pitch this to the ET or, whoever my boss is? So yeah, I think it's a fantastic way. And it's, hey, I've been slogging away at this for a long time. I've learned a lot of things. And if you can teach somebody, hey, here's where I've made mistakes, here's where I would have done different, and impart that into someone that's brand new in role, yeah, that's a huge opportunity to help somebody out and, get them, help them accelerate their career without as many mistakes, hopefully.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I mean, why reinvent that was
exactly.
actually the whole reason, very, 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 very big reason for starting this podcast, right? Because,
Yeah.
it's a collaborative group, IT folks.
Yeah. Very
And
much so.
when I would talk to you or anybody on the phone, hang up, it's gone,
Yeah.
and to share ideas and to not reinvent the wheel, people see this, they can pick up the phone, they can say, "Hey, Kevin, listen, I'm working on this or I'm working on that," or
Yeah.
ping you on LinkedIn or whatever they do, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the whole idea behind all this because I think that the whole groups, when I
Yeah.
came back, I was in Germany. I was at Oktoberfest and we were in the air. And I turned to my wife. I said, "I'm starting a podcast." She's like, "What?"
Yeah.
And when I called a few folks, they were like, "Great idea, do it." And
Yeah.
people like it. They just pick up the phone and they call the Kevins or they call the
Yeah.
Bob McGowans at Regeneron or whoever.
It's a big part of it. It's been a big part of my career. Quite frankly, somebody gave me advice, early on and, said, hey, networking is very, very important. And, buying somebody a cup of coffee or a lunch or even a dinner is the cheapest advice you're going to get, from somebody. And he was right. It's a very blunt statement, but, he was right. And that paid off in a big way where, I actively pursued, building relationships over time with other IT leaders. And I still keep those relationships today, which is great. And in fact, we even have a Slack board with, there's got to be 60 companies in it now where we're constantly sharing information. It's not confidential stuff, but hey, what'd you pick for this vendor? What about this software? What do you think about this? And who's got a contact here? To, hey, here's a job posting that I saw. Is anyone interested? So it's a whole community, which is a small one, as in Boston biotech and other markets as well. But since I'm here, I'll mention Boston. But there's a lot of collaboration. It's something that I don't know that exists in other facets of a company, but certainly in IT, in my experience, it's been a very collaborative set of individuals in the area that love talking to each other and sharing.
I'm going to argue that it goes all the way down to the beginner level. And here's why I'm going to argue that because
Yeah,
I have a daughter that just graduated from the computer science school in Pittsburgh, right? She
yeah,
data science statistics.
yeah,
And in high school, all the way back to high school when she was doing her Java, her Python, her AP computer science,
yeah,
she would come home. She's like, "Dad, listen, when I'm in my computer classes, we all collaborate and we all
yeah.
share ideas. In our other classes, we can't do that. It's considered cheating."
Yeah.
And she said, "Dad, I
Isn't that
like
funny?
I like the computer science model better." She said,
Yeah.
"Of course you do," you know? But I think they start there. Well, they should start there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
good.
I mean, it's a great way to, again, network, build relationships, figure out how to collaborate on a project. I mean,
Yeah.
you're learning that early in college, and that's something that you already have a leg up when you hit the workforce is, you know what? I know how to work with other people. and I've learned some things. Here's some of the bumps I ran into, and here's some of the things that work really well. So, learning that as early as possible, I think is a huge skill to develop is, working as a team versus you're right. In other classes, like, no, I'm working as myself to pass this test and pass this class. And yes, that's still helpful, but it's not teaching you those skills that map directly into, your likely what your first job will be.
Right. And in the computer science class, she was telling me, you four have to handle this problem, you four
Yeah.
handle this problem, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
great.
I mean, you could even start to develop some leadership. Who's leading the team and,
Right.
who's falling behind, who's not turning in their homework, who's missing their code. Like,
That killed it. Where they
it's
wouldn't
it's
see
a
it.
little microcosm of a business essentially.
Yeah, you're dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, so I want to ask a question more out of curiosity for myself.
Yeah.
You mentioned the low code stuff earlier.
Yeah.
Is that? I mean, is that just huge right now? Is it getting bigger? Tell me a little bit about that.
I think it's getting bigger. I think, low code, to be more precise, like workflows. You've probably seen, the term MCP, which is basically stringing together agents to do work, all the rage right now. We'll see if this actually bears fruit in the business world, but, it's all over Twitter and other social platforms where, people are now starting to train, each agent to do a specific piece of work and then hand it off. But there's plenty of sites now where, hey, I have no idea how to code in Python, right? And tell me, what you want this app to do, and it goes and builds it for you. So this AI play now of building mini apps is pretty easy for the average person to do. Or other products like Zapier, where it's like orchestration and workflows. Now with Python, you can run code and a bunch of triggers. So I think these things are starting to make, teams more efficient. And, Airtable, which is a lightweight cloud database. There's so many great tools out there for small shops that they can take advantage of and build really sophisticated workflows and solutions, even as a young company.
Yeah. No, I think I see them all. Different companies using different tools and
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I just
And this is the stuff I talk about with my colleagues all the time is, hey, how are you doing this? And they're like, oh, I built a workflow to do that. And, it's funny how I was at a Boston Sim meeting about a month ago, and the topic was risk management. And we stayed there for a little bit, but as soon as AI came up in the context of risk, like it dominated the conversation. It's pervasive. And it's funny that you reflect after the meeting and like, well, the topic was supposed to be X, and the whole group collectively agreed to talk about AI for, 60-70% of the meeting. So it's top of mind for everyone for a lot of reasons. And, they're generally interested. They want to empower their teams, or, hey, CEOs are talking to each other on a plane like, hey, I got this AI initiative. What are you guys doing? And then there's a bit of a FOMO component.
Well, yeah, I had that happen once. I had somebody call me and say, we need our head of AI. This was
Yeah.
January-ish or something. And I
Like,
said,
what do
well,
you need that for?
what does that mean?
Yeah.
What do you, they said, well, we just don't want to fall behind. I said, yeah, I'm the wrong guy for that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
because if something goes wrong, which it will, because we don't know what we're solving for, right?
That's it. Well, I was just about to say, if you're saying we don't want to fall behind, that tells me you don't really know what you want.
No. And then all of a sudden, when we don't know what we're solving for, we get to the end of the equation. This is what we solve for.
Yeah.
And we solved for the wrong thing because we didn't know what we're solving
Yeah.
for anyway.
What's the probability of success there?
Now it's my fault.
Like,
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
but on the flip side of that, I had not this past Christmas, the Christmas before when I was talking to a bunch of different CIOs. I think collectively a whole group of them had maybe one use case. This past year, I had 8 of them on a collective
Yeah.
podcast. And again, to your point, I had a bunch of, and I sent out questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
Think about these. We got to question 1 for 2 hours. It was about AI.
Yeah.
And
It's
each,
derailing.
each
Yeah.
of them had 4 or 5 use cases.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And everyone wants to talk about it and say, and also learn from others, like, how are you using it? And it's funny because that maps to, if you think about prompting, everyone learns how to prompt at a different rate. And even if I teach you, Steve, like how to prompt, I mean, you're going to play with it however many times, however many hours or minutes you have in a day to experiment. But the better you get at prompting, the better you are going to be with AI. And if you're really good in the company, how do I take what you've now developed and teach that to others and share sort of grassroots? And that's a way to upskill the entire organization versus, hey, I've got 5 people out of 200 that are really, really good at this and 150 that are mediocre. How do I change that? Well, that's one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have them again collaborate.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly, because I can't drive it all. I can get the catalyst in motion. I can provide the tools. I can do some training, but ultimately, what's going to resonate is, especially if you're a scientist and you're sharing with another scientist on your team, that's much more compelling and powerful than me trying to teach you, because I don't know what it is you're trying to do specifically with the AI beyond the general stuff. And generally, I know, but when it gets into the detailed work of comp chem or comp bio, you guys should be talking to each other once you start to learn how to use AI very effectively in your domain.
Well, what I've also seen some people doing, again, kind of taking it down another level here,
Yeah.
is going to their organization and saying, let's, it can come from internal or external, however they do it.
Yeah.
Train on terminology. Let's
Yeah.
all have the same terminology, right? I mean,
Hmm.
beginning of the internet age, we're talking, web browsers, search engines, what does all this
Yeah.
mean, right?
Yeah.
So let's all understand the same terminology so that when we do talk, we're all speaking, English. We're not
Yeah.
speaking different languages, and I've seen some folks doing that. And I even see some training organizations popping up doing those kinds of things, which I guess helps, right? Because some of the executives, the CEOs and the CFO too, they could learn so they can
Yeah.
speak the same language as everybody else as well, right?
Exactly. And they're in my experience, they're the ones typically the C-suite are the ones typically lagging. Right. And this becomes almost, it's funny. I was doing some training at a company, and it's like, well, it seems like, old people are are more resistant to using AI. Like, hey, you know, but they're all late 20s, early 30s. And I said, "No, I use AI all the time. I love it." But, I'm in IT. But if you think about, the average C-suite member, it's interesting because starting to see some mandates out there, which I don't agree with. But I think there's better ways to drive AI as part of your culture if that's what you're after. But mandating it, I think, is the wrong approach. But the challenge is there's different adoption rates or even different desires or like lack of trust. Like, how do I trust this thing? Do I really want to use it? And you look at the data and who the metrics of like who's using, and whether it's in Copilot or ChatGPT, you can see, not what they're prompting for, of course, but who's using it every day and who uses it once a month or zero. And you can use those data to start, targeting some training and understand, okay, what's preventing you from adopting this, and build your or tune your training program around those data.
Right. And some of them are encouraging folks to just, like you said earlier, just play with it,
Yes.
just use it. Do
Yeah.
whatever. Do what you would consider silly stuff, but do it. Use it.
Yeah.
See how
Yeah.
it could potentially help you,
And
right?
a lot of people are using it in their personal life, and that starts to map too, where, hey, I'm building, workout programs or meal plans or planning a trip. The use cases are endless. But the point is, you're now learning how to use AI on your own. Then you can bring that into the workplace, and you're getting better at just prompting, being more specific, or, hey, you are to act as a travel agent with 25 years of experience, specializing in trips to Europe, and like seeding the prompt that way, that the quality of your answers back are so much better than you just said, hey, I want a trip to, plan a trip to Ireland. Tell me what I should do. Like super generic, and the outcomes are going to be completely different.
Correct. Yeah.
So
No, it's amazing, what's
yeah,
going on. But then when you start talking about AI, like you said earlier, people start getting into the whole security thing.
yep,
Not a lot of folks are gonna talk about that. I did have one gentleman tell a story about how he was using AI at his company, and
yeah,
up popped you know formulary data from a competitor,
yep.
and screenshot, sent it off to the other CIO at that company. So that's everybody's nightmare.
I've heard about that kind of stuff, and that's what's going to really get you in trouble. And one of the early things you need to do is have some sort of AI governance team, and training, right? You can't, not something you can block. Companies have talked about, oh, we're going to block AI. Like, no,
Right.
you're not.
No.
You can't. And it's like blocking the internet. It's not going to
You're going to be
happen.
doing it over here then if
At
they're
the
not
end of the
doing it.
day, I can just take this out and,
Correct.
I've got, AI apps. So it's education, training. Don't put company data in personal AI tools, use our sanction tools, but
Mhm.
it also means making that right investment, not just saying no, but here's a platform we do sanction. It's protected. Here's how you use it. And if you have questions, you come to the team, legal, IT, whomever's sitting at the table on your AI governance committee to pose those questions. Is this good or not? Same thing with projects. If we're going to go do an SOW with a external party, well, how are you using our data? Right? Are you training the model? Is it going to be exposed to anyone else? To AI showing up in every tool under the sun, Acrobat. Adobe's pushing it, but it's not them. Everyone is putting AI in their tools, things you already own. Now it just shows up. Well, what do you do? Right. So you have to be prepared for all those scenarios because it's not slowing down, it's accelerating, and getting your arms around it, sooner rather than later is going to be
Get in front of it, right?
really
And you got different toggles in there, right?
yeah.
Whether it can learn enterprise wide or you let
Yeah,
go,
that's right.
so
Yeah, yeah, right. What do you integrate it with? And, do you hook it up to SharePoint or OneDrive or your Google Drive, depending on what kind of shop you are?
right.
And that's a decision point that, you have to get comfortable with. And oftentimes it's your legal or IP team that are most concerned, and typically with good reason. I mean, IP landscape is in drug discovery is becoming very interesting with AI. And now you have to prove that a human had significant contribution in the development of the patent. Like, super subjective, right? But including like what prompts failed, what prompt worked, showing how you got there, becoming part of the equation where you're not going to think that way naturally. You're just like, oh, I got the answer, here we go. And your IP lawyer is going to have to say, no, 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 I need to see more, because when I file, they're going to want to know exactly how AI was used in the development of this patent application, whatever this, novel chemical entity or whatever it is you have, as part of the application process. So it's an interesting landscape right now.
That is interesting. I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah. No, I got a good education about 6 months ago from our head of IP. He's like, because the USPTO had just released guidance
Okay.
on it, and he was walking me through it, and it was an eye-opening moment for me because I hadn't read that work yet.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
he was all over it. It's his job.
It is.
But that's the stuff that just is constantly changing.
Well, and as a company, you own AI as if it were an employee. It was yours. It's you.
Yeah. Right.
The buck stops with you. You can't say, AI did that. No, well, AI did it for you.
Yeah.
So,
That's you're not going to get away with a dog ate my homework on that one.
no, 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 not at all. Not at all. So, all right. Well, so we're winding down, but my last question that I like asking folks at any other technologies, any other things that you think we should talk about that you think are either here or coming that are shaping our industry that you'd like to touch on.
It's hard to move away from the AI discussion in terms of disruptive technology. I don't see too much out there right now because that's where there's just so much focus there. But I think it's more on the implications. Does it mean less jobs or job shifting? I think that's all TBD. There's a lot of hype across the entire sector of AI, including, oh, people are going to lose their jobs. Remains to be seen. That could be true, but this idea. I talked about this on another podcast the other day about Industry 5.0, which is more about the human component and coexistence with AI and robots and using it to create together versus displace. It's an ideal, but it's more robotics, but the human still plays a very important part of the equation. So it'd be interesting to see where this heads over the next 3 to 5 years.
Right. Yeah. I'm seeing the humans, right, taking the AI and to make a pretty, crude analogy or example, I guess you could say is, maybe AI is taking away 2 hours of the mundane tasks they have to do every day, right?
Right.
They can do it in 10 or 15 minutes. So now instead of spending 6 hours doing the higher level stuff, they're spending the full 8 hours, or
Exactly.
7.5, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's how I approach, training with oftentimes with groups is pretend you had a summer intern, right? What would you delegate to this intern? And it's like repetitive things and there's items you could be spending your time on that are higher up the food chain in value, and how can you free up that time by offloading it to AI, just like you would an intern or something similar. And
Right.
that's a good way to frame it, I've found, for people. Like, oh, okay, it gets the juices flowing about, all right, what do I do daily and what could I automate?
Right.
Right. And it helps us as an IT team engage with you on how could we help you automate some of those tasks.
Right. Of course. Yeah. No, that's all good stuff. I like that.
Yeah.
That is a good
A
approach.
lot of it is about data and governance too. So that's the other thing, where data sins are now fully on display when you go down the AI road, where you could get away with that pre-AI much easier. Still wasn't great, but now you try to get results out of, it, garbage in, garbage out still applies in this day and age. So we've spent, a lot of time at my previous company on governance, metadata, the data consistent. Otherwise, you're not doing much with AI on top of that. And that's where big pharma has a big advantage with the resources, the mountains of data they're sitting on for doing predictive type work versus just querying, right, in natural language. But I think that's the other, again, it's AI related, but I encourage anyone who's not already doing it to start getting governance and making that a huge priority. It's not the sexy part of AI, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to get the benefit you think you are out the other side.
Yeah. Whenever I talk to folks when we get into the data piece, it's kind of
Yeah.
my analogy is always, with your AI tools and whatever you built with technology, you're building this sexy looking Ferrari, but the data, which is the gasoline going into it, if you don't
Yeah.
have gas to put in that Ferrari, it's not going to go anywhere,
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
right. So it's in the
That's
driveway.
what the data is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
So anyway, okay. Well, cool. Thank you very much. I do have one final question, more on a
Yeah. Dude.
personal note I ask everybody. I don't know if you've watched any of my podcasts all the way through. If you have, you've heard this question. If you haven't, then you haven't. So I like seeing live music. I like
Yeah.
bands, right? And so my wife and I, we go and we see. Sometimes we've been to a few big, whatever those are called, festivals. But we'll
Yeah.
go and see different bands and such like that. So I like to ask folks, just on the personal side,
Yeah.
um, favorite live band you've ever seen, and if you don't like live music, that's
This,
fine.
this is easy.
There's a layup.
Yeah. Metallica, far and away.
Really cool.
Yes.
Did you see them when they just came around?
Yep. My wife and I saw them at Gillette last year. Fantastic. And we had seen them twice when we lived in Chicago in the mid 90s, and they're just so good. And the product they put out today, I mean, they're older than we are, and
They
they're
are.
so absolutely, their shows are fantastic. So if you're into that kind of music, I can't recommend enough. But it was such a good time, especially at Gillette.
Yeah.
It was great.
I don't even think you have to be into that kind of music, because my wife and I, we see Pearl Jam, we see
Yeah.
we see Dead and Company, we see a bunch of those kinds of cover bands, we see all sorts of bands. And I've always listened to Metallica, and over Memorial Day weekend, I went to 2 days of it in Philadelphia for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was
Yeah.
great.
They're just fantastic performers, and to see them still so into their work
Yeah.
after doing this forever is, I mean, they're not just mailing it in. Like
No.
some of these bands you see at Fenway, it was another concert last year, and had Def Leppard and
Yeah.
Bernie, who now has
But yeah, Steve Perry's not there. It's a
he's
different.
gone, and they got some kid.
They
He
do. They
sounds
found him on
like
YouTube. They found that kid on YouTube.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you're staring at, like, that's not Steve Perry. And they're like, no, Steve Perry's gone. I'm
He's
like,
gone.
yeah,
He worked out some
not
deal
too much
where
money.
I think he gets like 20% of all they do.
Yeah.
He
Well, I
was.
think they booted him because he wanted too much money, but
I think
it
so.
was fun to be there because it's Fenway. But compared to going to Gillette and watching the Metallica show, it was just night and day.
Really? I've
Yeah.
never got. So I grew up in Rhode Island. I went to school in Boston, and
Uh,
never got in. I went there to see the Rolling Stones or Grateful. Never got in because I was with
Yeah.
2 or 3 other people, and we had just enough tickets where one person went, so we left. Or I mean,
Got it. Yeah.
U2, Rolling Stones, Grateful Dead. It happened on all of them. Well, it wasn't Gillette then. It was Foxborough, wasn't it called
Foxborough.
Foxborough then? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen some shows in Fenway. That's fun, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Gillette's a good venue. I saw it a few years back, but I saw AC/DC there as well. They were really good.
I'd like to see them.
But the most recent one was Metallica, and then they've been consistent though, because like I said, mid '90s to last year, and the concert was just fantastic. So
I'll tell you what, Lars really still nails those drums, man.
yeah,
Woo!
yeah,
He's just
Mhm.
pounding like crazy.
Yep. And that's a testament. Like that's a lot of effort to keep that skill up, and like I said, not mail it in, and they're out there to perform for the crowd, and you can tell it's a lot of fun. We had a great time at that.
Yeah, they're like 60, 61, those guys, 62,
Yeah,
right in there, you know? So,
yeah.
anyway.
So not spring chickens, but
No,
still
no.
sound great.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much. That was great. I haven't gotten to Metallica yet, so I'm
There you
glad
go.
you did that. Yeah, that was good stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.